Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hero News. Kia ora, Chewy, sir. How are you, love?
Kia ora, Pat. I'm big Chewy balling with all of my extra cash for the budget. I haven't seen anything. I'm just assuming.
Yeah, man.
That's what's happening, right? Isn't it?
You're gonna be smoking in it, bro. It's like an average family. I think they promised it about $1 million a fortnight to the average family. Is that right?
Yeah, but I'm not the average family, man. I'm exceptional. I'm like I've clocked family.
Yeah.
We chose not to have kids, but I assume that there's now a big slush fund for independent podcasters, that sort of thing.
There's a slush fund and there's a slushy fund. Every podcaster is going to get a slushy machine.
Fucking nice.
Yeah, it's choice. I'm looking forward to it.
Oh, that's real good. Well, that covers everything. I guess there's no show tonight, so
no, get on with something else.
Yeah.
Hey team. Hope you're all. I think there's going to be some traffic tonight. I've been receiving emails all day with people sending us photos of the protests from all over the country. Later on this afternoon, you know, when your old grandparents will get back from their first trip to London and they go, and here's the wheel, and here's Buckingham Palace, and here we're going to do that basically. But we're going to go, I think this is Rotorua. Let's have a look at a few of those. Oh, I think this is Wellington. Let's look at some of those. Hey, this is Auckland. So we'll have a little kind of whānau sit around looking at our family photos later this afternoon, or this evening, I should say. Also, look, if we get time, I'm totally up for opening up Discord tonight, because it's evident that many of you watching right now were there at a protest. So we might just fly open Discord closer to the end of this hour, and if anyone wants to jump on and have a chat, they are more than welcome. So we've got picture time with Uncle Chewy a bit later on, photo time with Uncle Chewy. We've got Discord open to you guys if you want to have a crack possibly later on. I see Chewy's left. Now, I've said something to offend him, obviously. Oh, okay. But to start off with, we are, of course, going to talk budget. And me and Chewy don't know a single thing about the budget. So we thought, let's get an Oh, there we go. So the money's already
through it all.
It's already come in. The money's already come in, is it? Did you have the brown envelope? The brown envelope with the under the door? How did that work?
Yeah, definitely not little clear baggies of cash.
No. Let's just bring someone in who knows what they're talking about, and we can just sit back like slack-jawed yokels and kind of ask dumb questions. Economist, and from the CTU, it's Craig Renney. Craig, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, gents. How are you both?
Good.
I'm good. Yeah, we went down. Both Chewy and I were down at the Dunedin protests, so that was amazing. And not to wet our powder, we want to keep our powder dry. ODT seems to be doing a little bit of backroom shenanigans at the moment, talking about numbers on their site versus numbers that were there. So I've just tried to send myself like a 1.5 minute video, which is of the actual protest. And I think in the first 3 rows are about as many people as the ODT said were there. And then there was another 50 or 60 rows of people behind it. So hopefully that'll come through on the email. We'll be able to do that. But if we don't, there's lots of other photos and lots of other things. But you were in, obviously, budget day for you today. Did you just stay focused on the budget the whole time? Did you manage to get outside and have a look? Because you're in Wellington, obviously, for lockup. Did you manage to get out on the steps and have a look out the window, or?
I didn't, sadly, because the majority of the budget lockup runs from 10 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon. Gotcha. So all of that time we were locked in the banquet hall of Parliament, with no phones, no way of no internet, no being able to talk to anyone outside. So no, locked in a room with the government's new budget documents, and to be frank, there was enough in them to keep us interested for 4 hours. So so we chatted about that.
Is that like the sexiest 4 hours of the year for an economist, to be locked in? You know, economists around you, everyone. I'm assuming down to their skins, just sweating over the budget. Is that what I'm seeing? That right?
Pat, I saw my first budget when I was 9 years old. And by the time I was 12, I knew what I wanted to do for a living, which is write budgets. So I've been very lucky in my life. I've managed to write 3. So for me, it's the second best day of the year. The first best is my son's birthday, but this is definitely the second.
Good save. Really good save there, actually. Well done. Let's talk budget, shall we? And I'm going to start by bringing up actually something that you have written. I'm assuming you were writing this in lockup after you saw what was actually in the budget, how Nicola Willis broke her election promise. We want to talk about the budget. We want to talk about all the ins and outs, but I mean, let's just start there because there seems to be a lot of that back and forth today. You even heard it on the media. They did what they promised before the election. A lot of the mainstream media groups are saying that, yep, it's about what they said beforehand. We're all surprised they did what they said. And I'm just like, hang on, I'm going to play some video as we go through this. It doesn't quite seem it to me. So why don't we start like a couple of old negative pricks and look at a real negative? So how did Nicola Willis break her election promise? Let's start there.
So Nicola promised three things during the election campaign. She said that she could deliver her tax package without any borrowing, without adding to inflation, and regardless of the state the books were left in by the government.
Yeah.
Now, she's failed on all three of those tests. The government is borrowing an extra $17 billion over the forecast period. It's going to be issuing $12 billion more debt over the forecast period. It's going to it's going to spend a little bit more than about $14 billion in total in its tax plan. What does that mean? We're borrowing to pay for tax cuts. If we didn't have those tax cuts, we wouldn't need the borrowing. You can dress it up how you like. It's kind of, it's A minus B equals C. It's pretty straight. Even economists can manage to do this without taking our socks off. It's really quite straightforward. So as a consequence, we're borrowing for tax cuts. Two, the Treasury has a fancy measure called the fiscal impulse. What that does is it works out how much more money the government's adding to the economy. And in the next couple of years, that fiscal impulse is positive. What does that mean? It means more demand. It means more stuff being bought in the economy. As a consequence, that's likely to mean inflation is higher. That's likely to put more pressure on interest rates, which will put more pressure on rents and put more pressure on inflation. So it's failed its second test. Thirdly, she promised to do whatever the state of the government's books. We know that parts of the tax package actually haven't been delivered. So parts of the tax package aimed at changing working for families tax changes, they're not going to get delivered. The casino tax that was supposed to bring in $750 million, it's actually bringing in 190. So there are various parts that aren't being delivered. It's failed on all three of those measures. Importantly, regardless of whether or not it's passed her tests, the question is, does it actually do good stuff for New Zealand? Right. And the real answer there is no. Right? We're cutting spending left, right, and centre to deliver a tax package that delivers 10 times the benefit to a couple who both earn $150,000 than it does to a couple of pensioners who are on super.
I noticed, and forgive me, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. It said something like for a person who's on $57,000, they're going to get about $25 a week. For a person on the minimum wage, they're going to get about $12. And I went, hang on, minimum wage is about $48,000. How does that double in the space of earning an extra $7,000 or $8,000 or $9,000? My numbers are about right, aren't they?
Yeah, you're not wrong. You're not far off. So a minimum wage worker will get $25 per fortnight. The government likes to talk about these things in per fortnight measures. But that's $12.50 a week. Interestingly, that minimum wage worker is losing $25 a week from the below inflation increase in the minimum wage that took place in the 1st of April. So they're already $12.50 behind in terms of even after the tax cut. But for somebody on about $55,000, they'll get a little bit more. And the reason for that is because the tax thresholds move. And so you save a lot more money as you go up the tax system, because you go from 17.5% to 30% to 33%. And all of that new cash where the bracket moves, you make all of that difference in change. So small differences in the bracket can make quite big differences to income levels at that point.
Chewy, have you got anything? Because I've got a few little TikToks to show as well as we go through, but do you want to jump on anything here, sir?
It's a weird feeling to be not surprised, but also be disappointed. I think my favorite thing is, like, we've talked lots about the absolutely critical infrastructure, the Cook Strait ferries. And I see that there is something in there about the Cook Strait ferries. $600,000 for a tug for when they break down.
Yep.
Well, that was stunning to me.
So inside this document, and I can highly recommend you all try and get a copy, it's the Budget Economic and Fiscal Update, which is the actual budget document released today. At the back of the document, we have a thing called specific fiscal risks. Now, these are things where the government doesn't know the overall cost, but we do know that they might happen. And if they do happen, they will cost us a lot of money.
Right.
And in transport, you can see the fact that we now have an IREX specific fiscal risk, which says that essentially we're about to spend a huge amount of money on 3 new replacement ferries, second-hand ferries,
if we're lucky,
which don't exist.
Yeah, that's right. If we're lucky, because where are you getting them from? Because there's nowhere in the. I think Chewy, you said this once. There's something like 12 of these ferries that exist that would work in the Cook Strait. All of them are currently owned and used by other people, so there are no secondhand ones on the market. Yeah,
and because of the gauge that we use for our railway, none of them will take rail freight. So the freight arrives, has to be taken off the carriages onto trucks, put on the ferry, then across the strait, put back onto rail again. It's enormously inefficient, and it's just that's the level of short-term thinking that we've got.
And so we're going to do that.
It's critical infrastructure. It's never going to get any cheaper, and they've flubbed it.
Yep. And at the same time, we're going to emit more carbon because these are less efficient ferries. We have the less capacity to actually take things across the Cook Strait. That makes everything more expensive to shift. And we have to find land on either side of the Cook Strait to do all of the shifting from rail to lorry to put onto the ferry. I don't know how well you know Wellington, gentlemen. There isn't a lot of spare space around there. So it's a real risk, but it's kind of indicative of the kind of, I guess, the main theme of this budget. The main theme of this budget is this: the government has delivered its wants. It wants to deliver a tax cut. It wants to cut government spending, but it hasn't delivered what New Zealanders need. And what New Zealanders need is investment in health, investment in education, investment in transport, investment in the water infrastructure, investment in a whole range of things. Education operations grants, that's the main funding that funds our education system. That's going up by less than inflation. Tertiary education funding is going up by less than inflation.
So it's going backwards.
In March, the Ministry of Health told the Health Select Committee that the amount of money which has now been given to the Ministry of Health for health services was not enough for inflation. And yet it's given that amount of money. So we're going backwards in all of the key areas. And if you want to look at some of the other indicators, we're going backwards there. Unemployment's going to rise by 47,000 since this government has taken office. We're going to be spending billions more on welfare programs because there'll be more people unemployed. Child poverty indicators are all heading now in the wrong direction. There's many things wrong with this budget, and none of the things that it's doing are tackling the things that are wrong. They're tackling the political itches of the political parties who run the government today.
The thing about the rail going onto the ferries, etc., meaning it'll be more expensive to ship goods, move goods, means that it'll be more expensive to buy goods. So in other words, the person who will pay for that extra cost is the consumer. But I guess if you're a pensioner, that's fine because they've given you $4.50 back a week. So you'll be sweet. So I'm sure you can cover the extra cost of your products moving because you've got a whole $4.50 a week coming back to you. Fantastic.
Well, you've actually got $2.25 each. So, because it's $4.50 per household. So, if you can fight amongst you who gets the $4.50, you may well have enough for that, that packet of chewing gum or whatever it is that you're going to get for the loaf of bread. That's going to make that difference.
The other thing is, as you guys are talking, and I'm not trying to be a prophet of doom here, but as soon as someone gets seriously injured or dies or something happens on one of those ferries that they haven't replaced, then all hell will break loose. But it does actually make me think about the budget as well, and all of us going, okay, so that pensioner's got their $2.25 back per week, but now we're not going to fund 13 cancer drugs that we promised we would fund. So these people who are getting between sort of $10 and $20 a week back in society, great. two new loaves of bread. I'm sure that'll make it, unless you've got kids getting on public transport, then that all goes. And because you guys have got that back, more people dying from cancer or more people not being able to extend their lives to see their kids grow up. That's the active choice this government has made in this budget.
And that's exactly the right word, is choice.
Yeah.
Everything inside the budget is a choice. And one of the things you do is you demonstrate your values through the choices that you make. We're choosing to spend more money on security guards in hospitals than we are training new doctors and nurses. So there are plenty of things where we go, is this really the choice we want for the country? Is this really what we want to say? We're spending $3 billion, as we know, on landlords at the same time as we're actively cutting the amount of money going into state housing.
Yeah.
We're choosing different and bad outcomes. And it's not as if it's not as if there's no other choice. There are other choices that could be made that are better.
Yeah. And look, I mean, to his credit, Chris Bishop said, we've made some tough choices, like in his previous few media appearances, but then they're not being challenged on those tough choices. They're not being challenged on, we've all seen the story last week on the news on the mum with the solo mum with kids trying to buy her first house, missed out on the grant now. And so Bishop is saying, we're making hard choices, but they're not actually then addressing this person who's now going to have to wait for another year or two to save up more, by which she'll be priced out of the market because of house prices going up. So yeah, they're making choices, but like we all make choices every single day. The choices they're making are literally life and death for some people. Literally, not exaggerating, not using hyperbole, are literally life and death for some people.
Yep. And if you want to look at choices, I'm using so this is the government's own tax at a glance document, which are produced alongside the budget today, and it lists some sample families. A working couple where both adults both earn $150,000 per annum will receive in personal income tax changes $2,085 a year.
So $50, $45 a week.
A week. That pensioner couple are getting $4.50 between them.
So hang on, that's $300,000 income for a house. And this is the whole point about those at the top are going to do quite well. I think Chloe said something like, let them eat cake at the top and those at the bottom getting crumbs if they're lucky. So the people who need the money most of all are getting nothing or next to nothing. Beneficiary is nothing. The people who don't need the money, $300,000 income to your household, they're getting a little, here's another bottle of wine for you a week.
And that's just the income tax changes. That doesn't include the changes to interest deductibility for anyone who owns a rental property, the bright line test in terms of being able to sell rental property and not pay income tax on it. There's a whole range of other tax changes that, again, benefit those with assets, benefit those with income. And so the system is, again, more and more skewed. Rather than being, Treasury and the Reserve Bank and the Inland Revenue like to think of New Zealand as having a broad-based, low-rate taxation system. We have anything but that. We actually have a relatively high income tax system if you earn a living, and a very generous taxation system if you don't. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, there's a bunch of people who are doing lovely super chats. They're doing this from Gold. Here's my tax card. Thanks, Gold. Appreciate the $20 super chat. Kiwi Skirt. Here's my tax card. $20.50. Thanks, Kiwi Skirt. Late fee, and you can have my $18 tax card. Thank you, Tim. You're being very generous. I got there to have a look around to see. We've got some questions for Craig, and they're just people giving us their tax cards. Very nice. Here's another one. Ruru, $20.05. Pat and Chewy, here's my weekly tax card. Chewy, I think that Porsche might be coming in the driveway if we keep getting people giving us their tax cards like this every week.
I actually have a counter view here, Pat. I think we might be getting stiffed. Which tax calculator are they using? Are they using the pre-election one? Or are they using the one that they put up yesterday? Because there is a little bit of difference there. I saw this pop up on Reddit. So someone's chucked in the same details, and there's a suspicious little difference there.
So the left-hand side is pre-election $50.75. The right-hand side is the one now. So it's $12 difference, almost exactly $12 difference.
And the reason for that may well be the Working for Families changes, which were then abandoned by National on taking office. So it may well be that actually those changes, are making that difference in that space. But overall, I think the interesting thing there is that person still has an image of the National Party tax calculator. We know that 2-3 days before the budget, they removed their tax calculator from online, so you can't actually do that calculation. So it sort of again speaks to the lack of honesty and integrity in conversations around tax and in conversations about what's really in this budget for people.
I'm a very sad person, and I spent the afternoon in my office in my studio watching the budget live and screen recording everything, and then every now and again pausing it, cutting something off and putting it up on TikTok. So I'm going to give you a couple of these now, Craig, for you to either explain or comment on. This to me was possibly the worst commentary, meaning the worst as in the nastiest, the worst thing I saw the government do today, according to people who work with people who don't have much money. This is from TVNZ. This is Jack Tame talking to John Campbell, and they bring in what Child Poverty Action says about this budget. Have a listen.
Ahead of the budget, TVNZ's chief correspondent, John Campbell, who's already working his way into my shot, travelled to the far north to find out what people in Te Toitū wanted. And an amazing line stood out from his project. This is Kane Leiden from Mid-North Budgeting Services in Kaikoia. Have a listen.
It's like an economic COVID without the masks.
That is how Kane described this economic moment. Heading into the budget, how's she feeling about the details?
Yes, I've just spoken to her, and she says the budget won't make any difference to her clients at all. So she's been doing budgeting advice in Kaikoia for over 20 years. She says the cost of living crisis is economic COVID without the masks. The last 3 years, it's been getting worse. She's never seen it worse than now. She thinks $12.50 for people on the minimum wage per week, nothing for beneficiaries, will make no difference to her clients at all. I spoke to Child Poverty Action, who monitor the impact of the budget on children living in poverty, and they have said to me, and I quote, the government has put up a policy package knowing it will increase child poverty in Aotearoa, New Zealand.
There you go. It will increase child poverty in New Zealand, and the way it's implied by Child Poverty Action, and they know it. Any thoughts, either of you?
Well, I can certainly tell you what the government's own findings on this are. So the government is legally required to produce this, which is the Child Poverty Report, alongside the budget documents. The back page of that has this, which are the 3 measures of child poverty. Now, we have legally mandated targets that we're supposed to hit in the short run and in the long run. We're hitting none of them. In fact, child poverty measures are all heading, as you can see, in the wrong direction. These are the targets we're supposed to hit. So we're heading in the wrong direction. And importantly, we're heading in the wrong direction for material hardship. And that means children who don't have 2 pairs of shoes. They don't have a winter coat. They regularly feel cold in their home. They don't go to the doctors or the dentists because the family can't afford it. They don't have 2 square meals a day. In a country as wealthy as New Zealand, that's a sin. And yet, on this measure, it's heading in the wrong direction and away from the target. The government says in its publication that it's got a new approach to this, and that it says a key driver of child poverty is living in a benefit-dependent home.
Okay.
A key driver of child poverty is being poor. It doesn't matter whether you're in a benefit-dependent home or not.
So nothing about how they're going to help people get out of the situation. Just identifying the problem. What Chewy says is every single night they identify the problem and they typically offer no solutions for that problem.
The government.
No, they've offered one right there. If the key driver is being in a benefit-dependent home, we take away the benefit. Problem solved. They're not benefit-dependent anymore.
And as a consequence, they're saying crucially, the principles of social investment will guide decisions on where to invest and what to do differently to improve outcomes for New Zealand's children and young people. So it's a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
The best way to solve poverty is with money. Is to make sure that people have enough that they can actually put food on the table, keep a roof over their heads and stay warm. That's not too much to ask in a country as wealthy as New Zealand. And it's certainly not the answer just to say, well, if you're in a benefit-dependent home, that's on you, therefore you've got to do something about it. There is a real risk that the tax giveaway at this budget actually makes things worse, because the benefits are so loaded to higher income earners, it stretches their incomes even further out. Because poverty is relative, that actually makes it harder to solve relative poverty challenges.
Chewy, do you want to speak to that? Yeah, you go. You
Seething. I'm seething about this. Like John Campbell was there. I read his piece on his trip up to Northland and that sort of thing. And like, we know that Northland's a poor area, right? But that just shone a light on it that was like, is this even the same country? Do these people that have come up with this budget give a fuck about anybody in that area? Do they care about the kids in Southland that are living in cold, rotten old state homes? No, because we want to make the profit and loss statement look nice and fat for people who own multiple properties, for people who have shares, for people that don't need the help. It is hard for parents to be good parents when they're just trying to keep their head above the fucking water, and these guys just want to point at them and go, look at those guys struggling. They're struggling because they're bad at swimming. When all this government is doing is giving them another brick. Hold this a bit.
Chewy, what we do is we say, we look for our meaning in life in the accounting targets. We say, are we in surplus? We say, do we have the money available to give people back in a tax cut? In 2015, we had sparkling government accounts. We were in surplus. Things were going really well from a Treasury perspective. We also had 1 in 7 children living in poverty in New Zealand. We were looking at the accounts for meaning, whereas we should be looking at need. And unless we get back to looking at need, we're never actually going to solve the problems, because the accounts will tell us to do things that we shouldn't be doing.
I've got another video I want to play you, and I'm sure this is my era, Craig, not the government's, because I'm sure they wouldn't say something different today than they did several weeks ago. I'm sure they'd be consistent. Because we put it now. Okay, first of all, tell me if I'm wrong. I was pretty clear before the election that they were saying over and over and over again, the average family would get $250. Oh, sorry, we'll get up to $250, and they, about 3 weeks before the election, they thought they'd better come clean on that, when the media helped them actually spread that bullshit around for a very, very long time. But that was the number in my head. Average family, $250. I'm confused because in Nicola Willis's conversation with Jack Tame today, she said something different, and I just want to check. I'm just being fair and honest, if I've missed something, or if they're talking horseshit. I don't know. So let's just have a listen to this conversation.
The people who stand to gain the most are families earning around the average household income, who have children in childcare and high childcare costs. They're the ones who can get up to $150 a fortnight in a childcare payment, refunding their early childhood fees, as well as getting the impact of tax reduction, increases to the in-work tax credit, and up to $250 a fortnight.
So how many people will that be?
Now, she doesn't answer this question, but this is the thing. We know that before the election, it was only 3,000. Now, she doesn't answer the question how many will get 250, but she does go on.
That will only be a small group, Jack. I'm advised that there will be around 19,000 households who will get more than $200 a fortnight. There's about 21,000 families who will qualify for the full $150 family boost payment. On average, an average family gets from this package $78 a fortnight.
Now, that's the bit that confuses me. Now the average family gets $78 a fortnight, whereas I thought, tell me where I've got it wrong, that before the election, the messaging was the average family would get $250 a fortnight. What have I missed? What's going on?
So you haven't missed anything, Pat. The story is before the election, the now government and then National Party was saying $250 tax cut for families per fortnight. It's going to make a real difference. Then they got caught out on that. we at the CTU did some analysis looking at what that meant, and we came up with the fact that there were actually about 3,600 households who would benefit up to $250 a fortnight. The National Party then came back and said, up to. It was always up to. So the words up to are doing a lot of heavy lifting here.
Absolutely.
In terms of this particular piece of work. So the average family would get around $78. Again, it's not entirely clear what the average is in that sense, and how you quite measure the average family. I heard you and Chewy talking about exceptional families earlier, but there's certainly no exceptional families bonus here. If you're a couple averagely earning with 2 children, your income tax changes accrue to around $1,500 a year, which is a lot less than that. If you look overall, the tax changes, they're made up primarily of the family tax, the early childhood support changes, rather than the income tax changes. So if you have children, it tends to make a really big difference. But to access those, you have to be a certain type of family. You have to have a certain level of income. Your children have to be the right age. And so the numbers of people who benefit get smaller and smaller and smaller. What we know from reporting from staff tonight, from Tova O'Brien, is that the Minister of Finance may have made a small, what's the correct phrase? She may have misspoke during that, and that actually the number of families who will be receiving $250 per year may well be less than 3,000 overall. So even smaller than claimed at the election. At the end of this, I have a small bet for you, gentlemen.
Okay.
I think there will be more people in the population of Foxton than there will be who actually can claim the full $250.
Hey Siri, how many people live in Foxton, New Zealand? 3,310. 3,310 people in Foxton. All right.
I think there will be fewer people. I think there'll be fewer people than live in Foxton can actually get the overall $250. Interestingly, there's another number, which is one of the top package here, says that a couple with 4 children, 2 of whom are in ECE, can claim $271 per fortnight, which is even larger than the $250 claimed. My guess is that there is not a single family in New Zealand who can qualify on that basis.
How do we find that out? If you're right, can we drill into those? Can you guys drill into those numbers?
We will.
And come back on Monday and give us an exclusive before you release it yourselves.
But because you have to be a couple with 2 school-age children and 2 children, both of whom are in ECE, with one parent earning 80,000 and the other parent earning 60,000 for an annual household income of 140,000, where you're spending $600 per fortnight on childcare.
Is there anything in there about being one of the parents needs to be left-handed, and one of the children needs to limp? Something like, is that in there as well?
I think the left-handed parent also needs to be a Taurus.
Yeah. There you go.
So this is a ghost family that doesn't exist, and as a consequence, it speaks again to the honesty and the integrity in the reporting of this.
Yeah.
The other thing that springs to mind while we talk about ECE is, of course, all of this money that the government is throwing around is going to private ECE providers, and there's some enormous ones here that are very politically active. So that's good for them. They can put their rates up. And last time we spoke about this, Pat, I think you mentioned that there's some, or maybe it was someone in the chat mentioned that there's providers out there that are basically going, thank God we can put our rates up.
No, I know someone who owns a couple and was told, I phoned them to ask about what this would do, and they said, Yeah, it gives us the ability to put up our fees immediately. And they weren't saying it from like a grubby, they were like, that's why the Right Family Foundation is buying them all up, because they're running at a loss and they actually have to put their fees up. And so they were looking at actually as a like, God, thankfully we can finally put our fees up, because the last government weren't supporting us enough. So we need either more support or the ability to put our fees up to literally survive. So that was the vibe behind it, just so people know.
So there's a real risk, much like when student allowances went up by $50 a week, that simply the rent goes up by $50 a week.
Yeah.
You make money available, suddenly, if it's available, the centres will then go, fantastic, we can survive. They'll put it up. The net benefit for households is exactly zero.
Yeah. Well, that's like giving you a $20 tax cut and then taking away free travel on buses for families with 3 or 4 kids going to school. All of a sudden you're $50 a week worse off, if not more, but you're getting $20 back a week for your tax cut. So it's like it's not like just the tax cuts, it's what else are they doing. Let me say this is from Spiderhoof. Craig, you are amazing at explaining all of this in easy to digest terms. Thank you. P.S. Pat, this is already on my TikTok. Which it is. Look, there's Spiderhoof's TikTok, and there's already a clip. We're already up there, rocking and rolling on Spiderhoof's TikTok. There's another one that you wanted to get to, Chewy. I'm not quite sure which one, because Frosty's has got a couple up there. Do you want to pick out the one you're talking about?
Yes. So this is a question for you, Craig, from our chat. Craig's thoughts on a land value tax.
So a land value tax, and there are some countries that operate them, and sort of they come in many different flavors. So there's not just one land value tax; there's lots of different ones. They're very favored by economists because you can't, generally speaking, get out of the ownership of land. Somebody either owns land or they don't. So it's not like property or other forms of assets where it's easy to hide them overseas. You can see it, and so it's a lot easier to actually tax. One of the things it also tends to do is it encourages people to develop land. Because if you're just holding land and you're paying tax on it, if you sold it or you turned it into housing or you turned it into something more intensive, you'd make money, which would pay the land tax. So it encourages development and encourages much better uses of land. The challenge is how do you set it in such a way that you don't affect farmers who have lots of land because they need it to produce food or dairy or something else, and that makes that hugely more expensive. And how do you do it in ways that where somebody may own a parcel of land and have a property on it, but because they don't have any income, they don't have the means of paying the tax.
Right.
And so there's a number of pros and cons. One of the most useful ways I've seen use a land value tax is in Ireland, where they had briefly a thing called the vacant land levy, where land that had been zoned for housing but wasn't being used for housing was open to a 3% annual land value tax. And that really encouraged people to use land rather than land banking, and just hoping that land values would bring them some money in the future. So it's a nice idea. The real challenge here is that we actually need to look at tax right across the system and how we reform our system in tax, because we overtax labour enormously. We overtax consumption enormously, but we don't tax capital gains. We don't tax wealth. We don't tax a range of other areas. And we need reform, not just in one area, but we need reform right across the piece so that we can have a taxation system that does two things. One, that balances the weight of demand more equitably on the shoulders of those who can actually genuinely bear the costs of tax. But two, also encourages the kinds of economy that we want to see.
Yeah.
Everyone has really expensive house prices because you don't pay any tax on property if you own multiple properties. Instead, if we lived in another country which had a CGT, you'd see more investment in firms, in plant, in equipment, which would make the whole economy more productive. We overtax pensions. We tax people on the income that they put into a pension. We tax their interest, but we don't tax it when we leave. So when they take the money out of the pension, it's what's called TTE, tax exempt. Around the rest of the world, it's exempt, taxed. So that your money going into your pension isn't taxed, your interest isn't taxed, but when you take it out, it's taxed. What that does is it means the value of compound interest works in your favor, and it really encourages savings. It really encourages people to build KiwiSaver pots of money rather than getting taxed on the way through.
I've got a couple. I want to go through an RNZ article just quickly because they've done a big list up for us morons on the winners and the losers from 5:20 this afternoon. It seems to me that they're drinking a little bit of the national Kool-Aid because they're talking about 1.9 million households will benefit. I guess they're saying literally the winners are, even if it's only a few bucks.
Yep.
Roads, health, getting something as well. Landlords, obviously, big winners. Police, education, Māori, $12 million for kohanga reo. I guess that's one kohanga reo property maintenance. That's one part for Māori that would be good. It seems like it might be the only one. Te Matatini received another boost this year's budget from 2025. They will get 48.7 million over 3 years. That goes with the 34 million over 2 years the National Kapahaka Festival received in budget 2023. National Disaster Response, local councils. The losers. Okay. The countries, and now I'm happy for you to speak to any of these, Craig. Mm-hmm. I'll just list them out and then you can come back to them if you like. We've got the country's debt level, obviously borrowing more. Tax evaders are the losers, apparently. The next lot of first-year uni students, overseas student loan borrowers, online gambling operations, Māori, and then it lists Te Akawhaora, a Māori Health Authority, funding 40 million to the new supply and capability of Māori housing is being cut. $20 million funding for rangatahi transitional housing. Losers. This is one as well, which kind of went under the radar until a bit of investigation went on. New Zealand Film Commission, New Zealand Symphony Orchestra, and Ngai Taonga Sound and Vision. The government saving 5.55 million over 4 years by spending less on those institutions. Consumer Advocacy Council, energy programs, Wellington Science City Project, and Farmac. Some pretty big things in there for the losers. Is there anything that you identify that you can pick out of there that we need to know a bit more about, like that some of the more important ones than the others?
Well, let me start with the Māori one there, where they've got those as a winner. So if I look at what we call Vote Māori Development, which is all the spending on Māori development in the budget. Now, this here is Vote Māori Development. I don't know if you can see that. One of the things you can see is that there's actually no new spending in Vote Māori Development.
Right.
At all.
Okay.
What there is a number in brackets, which is called savings and revenue. Mm-hmm. And it says, over the next 4 years, Māori Development will save $96.7 million. So that's a cut to Māori Development of $96.7 million. There's not a saving. There's no new spending in this area. That's also true, by the way, for Pacific peoples. The entirety of Pacific peoples has no new spending in it, but it does save $25.6 million across the forecast period. So there's about $130 million from those two community centres gone, not replaced with anything.
So for us extra slow ones, because there's no new spending, if they're saving it, it means they have to be taking it out, hence a cut.
Yes, correct. So that's a cut, and you also lose inflation. So because inflation last year is about 4%, that's a real terms cut of 4%, and you lose $130 million from those two departments across the next 4 years. So that's not really, there's no real winners in this space. But you did right. There's a range of programs that are being cut in that space. Emergency housing is also being cut in that space. And at a time of hugely increased demand. In terms of some of the other areas that you highlighted, you're right. Sort of there were the symphony orchestra, or a range of other smaller arts, culture, and heritage programs are being cut. You could see that the energy programs are being cut. So the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Authority loses approximately $160 million across the forecast period. And that's because all of the programs designed to tackle climate change have been cut.
So when we hear Chloe going, this is an attack on climate change, this is the area she's talking about, energy programs.
So there's a specific program called the Climate Emergency Response Fund, which had approximately $1.5 billion left in it. That's all gone. That's disappeared. So all of that money that could have gone to tackling climate change, that's disappeared. We also had a program called the National Resilience Plan that was designed to pay for the kinds of infrastructure we would need to respond to climate change, to natural disasters, to Cyclone Gabrielle, to that sort of thing. That's disappeared.
Right.
So there's a range of areas where you go, well, hang on a second, we're just not planning for the future. That it's that very short-term view of what good is. If it's good for today, that's fantastic. Anything longer than that, forget about it. We'll have the money back.
Shocking. Chewy, I've got another question to ask. It's not really on the budget so much. So do you got anything you want to jump in with?
I don't like hearing my own words back from someone much smarter than me. I want someone smarter than me to come on and say, "No, Chewy, you're wrong. You're overreacting."
No,
it's not really like that. And then you've just said exactly what I've said time and time again.
I was asked earlier today, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad was the budget? And I said it's about an 8. It's not Liz Truss. Don't go out and buy a lettuce. There's no, there's no, the economy is not about to. No, well, with your tax cut, Chewy, you can afford at least half of one. But or at least one over a fortnight. But in terms of there's no lettuce needed here. The economy is not about to fall over, and that's a good thing, right? But it's pretty bad. There are a range of cuts to programs right across government, and they're not done in a kind of coherent sense. They're just arbitrary things that are being cut in terms of government spending. There's quite clearly a lean away from spending on young people, on spending on Māori Pacifica communities, on spending on low-income households. But there's quite clearly a lean towards spending on more roads. There's quite clearly a lean on supporting landlords. There's quite clearly lean, on making sure that the government is delivering to its voting base rather than to delivering the needs of New Zealanders.
I want to ask you a question about blame Labour, because that seems to be something that we hear a lot of. And I'm going to go to a Twitter conversation I was happening, because I want you to answer this for me or for us. So a few days ago, we put up a little clip on Twitter and on YouTube, National's budget promising to be the most underwhelming. But then again, you knew that, didn't you? And you voted for them. Anyway, I was being a bit pissy about them and saying it was going to be underwhelming. Someone, I don't know who this person is, Elliot, comes in and says this: the Jacinda Ardern NZ Labour Party was the worst in New Zealand history. The level of economic ruin is from their ideology. To which I answered, what is your metric for that? Other than spouting talking points and political narratives fed to you by someone else, precise metrics for your claim that they were the worst in New Zealand history. Then someone came into a pissing match. What are your precise metrics that they improved anything? So, of course, what I did was talked about being one of 7 countries in the world where our age expectancy went up. So there you go, I answered it. But then I also said, but now the onus is on this earlier guy. He made the claim that they were the worst in history. And as yet, as you can see, I'm still waiting. But I wanted to know a couple of things, right? I wanted to know how much of what we see today does, if any, sit with Labour's, even if it's Labour's debt because of COVID and they had to do it, how much sits with them today, and how much, if any, do we have to just lay straight at the feet of this Tory government because their agenda rides over all, and anything blamed Labour is just a squirrel look away, according to them?
One of the things about being in government is that it's a contact sport, right? You want to be in government. You put your name forward, you get elected, you form a government, so that when they hand you the reins of power, when they say to you, you're in charge now, you have to own that. Holus bolus. This government's been in charge for 6 months, and all of the decisions inside this budget belong to this government. It could make different decisions, it could do different things, and as a consequence, everything in here, everything inside this lovely document is actually up to them, not up to anybody else. So when they say, oh, well, we're just dealing with the disaster, the consequences of the previous government, sure, that'll work for a bit. But the long run consequences of this, the fact that you're giving huge amounts of money away in tax, you're borrowing more to pay for it, that you're cutting essential services, that child poverty is getting worse, that unemployment is rising, those are on you because you're in control. You can do things differently. Now, when there are plenty of things that you could say about the previous government, that why did it take so long to deliver fair pay agreements? Why did it take so long to actually genuinely tackle some of the social development challenges in the country? Why did it take so long to get a handle on housing? And why did house prices go up as quickly? There are plenty of things you can complain about. The reality is they're in charge. They wanted it. Nobody handed them the reins of power by accident. So own it. You want to make your own decisions, do it now. And they can blame the previous side, but you're in charge. You get to say either why you can't do things or why you are doing things, but don't just say it's the previous lot's fault.
They've been singing that from that song sheet for 6 months, haven't they? What we inherited, what we inherited.
So I come from a country where I was born in January 1979.
Hang on, I thought you were. Is that not a West Coast accent? I thought you were from somewhere in the West Coast of the South Island, weren't you? No,
born in the UK in 1979, and I had 3 glorious months pre Margaret Thatcher, and then she came to power. And when I turned 18, was the first time that Conservative government was unelected from office and the Labour Party came in. So my entire childhood was under a Conservative government. Even when I was 18, that government, that Conservative government, was blaming the previous government from 1979 for what it had done and for why it was still doing what it was doing today.
Good grief! And
it's just a political trick. Yeah. It's just something that they want. You did right. This is a country where life expectancy went up. Fewer people died than normal during COVID.
Yeah.
Unemployment fell to record lows. Unemployment was the lowest it's been since the 1st of September 1986. I know that exact date because that's when we started collecting statistics on that.
and remember, that was mentioned as a problem, wasn't it? We had to shed jobs to get inflation under control.
Yep. We had we were a country that had 112,000 people coming into the country. That's a good problem to have, not a bad problem to have. I'd far rather live in a country where everyone was trying to get in than one where everyone was trying to get out.
Yeah.
But now all of these things are now, because the metrics are heading in the wrong direction, they're all now the fault of the previous government. Well, hang on. You've been in charge for 6 months. What have you done about it, except for actually make those metrics worse?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen a couple of texts, I think tweets from Kieran, who seems to be the person in the media the whole time talking about. There was one the other day talking about how many houses Labor built, and then it's got a graph that goes down by 7 months. How many decisions have even been made by this incumbent government to start building a house in that 7 months? And the answer is 0. Yeah. All right. Hey, this has been amazing, and we can tell it's amazing because right now we have the biggest number of live viewers we've ever had in the show. So people are appreciating and enjoying what you're doing. Chewy, if you're okay for a couple more minutes, Craig, are there any questions, especially in those super chats, directly to Craig that we can throw to him? Because if there is, we should, and then we'll say goodnight and we'll start looking at family photos, Craig.
Okay.
Anything you can say?
We're going to start with we'll probably start with some of the heavier questions and then work up from there. How are the sausage rolls this year, Craig?
Bang average is the honest answer. Pretty average. The catering was pretty average. There were no Lamingtons this year, much to the annoyance of pretty much everyone who's been there for a long time.
Probably part of the cuts. There's the 6% that they save the quality there.
I was going to say the lentil curry that was provided as part of lunch certainly seemed like one of the cutbacks.
Right. Not so much a question. Craig is out here being a legend for us laymen. Yep. Absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. Thanks, Craig.
Here's a question from JC and the Pigeon Cats. Hi, Craig. Does the tax advantage of the unproductive property sector curtail investment in productive economy and small business?
The honest answer is yes. So if you can imagine, Jen, so imagine you had $1 you wanted to invest, and you could get 10 cents a year from a productive asset, and you can get 10 cents a year from owning a rental property, but the 10 cents a year from a productive asset is taxed. The 10 cents a year from the rental property is not. Which one are you going to go for? Yeah. It's human nature to choose the rental property. It's also safer. And so,
and it's appreciating. You don't get return untaxed. You then obviously got the appreciating asset that your tenant is paying off on your behalf. So it's like a win-win-win. It's like 3 wins. It's like you're building equity, you're getting a return with no tax, and you're building the value of your asset as well. It's 3 wins.
I often explain it like this: property is the only market where you can take somebody else's money, which is the bank. You can get somebody else to pay the debt off, which is the tenant, but you get all the profit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a sacred cow. Like, so many people are so heavily invested in the property market, always going up, that it is strangling everything else that we need to get done.
But the solution to this is both supply and demand. The solution to this is to manage the demand curve, so that actually we can put out enough housing to actually make sure everyone has a choice. That actually there's high quality housing chasing out the slum housing. We know that exists in every city around New Zealand. The only reason we have such poor housing in New Zealand is because it's so profitable. And the reason it's so profitable is because there's endless demand for housing because we never build enough.
Yeah.
I think we got one last question here from Gary. Hey, Troy, can you ask Craig what mental health care got for the budget?
That is a great question, and because there isn't a specific allocation from memory for mental health in the budget. I'm just going to go and double check my notes here. So if I look at health, there was a big increase in what was called the Te Ora cost pressures, which is the amount of money that goes into general health expenditure, and that was set out. And that will include money for mental health in that area, but just as part of the Ministry of Health budget. But there wasn't money specifically, with the exception of Gumboot Friday, for mental health services. We did a range of things. We spent some money on COVID preparedness, which we probably should. We spent some more money on expanding breast screening to 70 to 74-year-olds. We spent $24 million on Gumboot Friday, delivering free youth mental health counselling services, but that's it.
Wow.
There's nothing specifically for mental health, but it may well be inside that Te Ora overall cost pressure, and we'll have to wait for Te Ora, the Ministry of Health, to work out how it's going to break that down in order to then work out to what extent that's actually going into mental health. But there's nothing specifically that's going to give the kind of boost to mental health that's anywhere near the level of need, and certainly not the unmet need in New Zealand.
All right. Hey, listen, I this is how this show rolls, and it's both good and bad. Thank you for giving us some time. We were talking about 20, 30 minutes. It's been an hour. It just flies by, doesn't it? But really, really appreciate you giving us some time. I know it's probably been a really big, long, tiring day for you. So for the end of it to end up with couple of bullfeds from Dunedin, it's greatly appreciated by both us and obviously by the people watching now, getting their questions answered, and the people who will watch this on demand and watch the clips as we go through the weekend as well. So Craig, you're a beautiful man, and I echo the themes of what we've heard in the chat. Thank you so much for doing what you do. It's so interesting that, to me, that you seem to fill a gap that many of us would hope that the political parties would fill when pushing back. And, we know that we can rely on your numbers, and what you bring us is good data and good information. And I just want to kind of honor you and thank you for that. And thank you for coming on.
No, thank you for having me on. More than happy to be here talking to your audience. And if you ever have any special requests for anything from the budget or anything in the economy, just let me know.
Well, I'm sure what will happen over the weekend is there'll be some more deep diving, and there'll be some linking of things together, and then they'll be going, oh, hang on, this and that and that. So yeah, I'm sure we'll still be talking this next week, but thank you for tonight. It's been amazing. So I appreciate you giving us some time.
Have a great night, gents.
All right. You too. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks, Craig.
Craig Renney, economist from the CTU. Woo!
So, got a couple of things to quickly crack through before we go.
Are you not going to say we got to 950 live viewers? Are you not going to say that first?
I want the bigger number.
We were a hair's ball, is that a saying, away from 1,000 live viewers. It'll dip off now because Craig's left and it's just us fuckwits left. But anyway, yes, sorry, sir, you've got some stuff to go to.
Come on, guys, get your secondary and third devices out. Get your kids' Chromebooks, open them up. Look, I just we're going to talk a bit more about the ODT in a little bit, but I just noticed something on their website today. So here in Dunedin, God, that's a tiny wee window. Let me fix that. 2024 post-budget briefing with the Honourable Chris Bishop, Wednesday, June the 5th at the Glenroy Auditorium, Dunedin. Get your tickets here. Brought to you by Business South, the Otago Daily Times, and Grand Casino. Do you know how much those tickets are?
$500. I got no idea.
No, they're $110.
Wow.
To go and see Chris Bishop for an hour and a half.
To go and see a public servant who we already pay speak about a budget that's working with our money, $110.
It's not a public meeting. It's not a government minister fronting up to the public, to taxpayers. It is a paid for, ticketed event for people that can manage to rustle up $110 to go and see him in the middle of a work day. Now, remember, those of us that went out to support Māori today, well, we're work shy, unemployed, rabble rousers that best behave with respect, and
So
we're
true.
also breaking the law. There's some sort of difference there, I'm sure, that a smarter person might be able to explain. But that's
I can't see it.
fuck-ass bullshit. God, it makes me mad. And the second thing, and this is just as serious and worthy of discussion, I've got this footage of your average New Zealander dealing with their tax cut.
Yeah. Oh.
On your rent, your rate, your transport, your early childhood, all gone. Who knows? Fuck knows where it's gone. I was promised. What the hell?
Oh, that's so mean.
It is mean, and Nicola Willis should feel bad for doing that.
Now, listen, we've got a shit ton. Have you got rid of all those super chats we've already done as we've been doing? Because there's a shit ton of there. We've got to go through them and we've got to say
there is an absolute shit ton. I know I've taken some out.
Jackson Media, thank you for your super chat. Rumors are that both Seymour and Willis are battling for world's worst humans today. Also, BHN, please take my Wally tax cut on $9. Thank you. Appreciate that. Mr. Arvids has done the same thing. Knew it before it's official. Now here is my tax cut. Thank you for the super chat, $2. This was a way while ago, but obviously, you know,
that's how much the chat's got away with us.
Yeah, kooky, late fee. Appreciate that. David McLucky, just for the super chat. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And Belfast Show, just for the super chat. Thank you. Appreciate that. Because I Care says they are doing this to support the transport industry who fund National, New Zealand First and ACT by using more trucks and less rail. That's not the Frosty comment that you used, I think, but thank you for another super chat there, Frosty. Borrowing $12 billion for $10 billion to landlords. Fucking bullshit. You won't send if swear words are uncensored. Really? There you go. Learn something every day. Kiwi Bird, thank you for your super chat. Late fee also, David Seymour sucks. It's just there. Gold, thank you for your super chat. 0 is included in the set of numbers included in up to 250. Very, very true. Kiwi Bird, thank you for your super chat. Nicola gave me whiplash with her budget speech. Because I Care, thank you for your super chat. Dickwood Seymour, Worst Human Being Club, is growing quicker than the poverty numbers. Oh, a little bit of bringing up topical news in your chats now. Jezza says how much detail of reduced revenue is known. That was probably for best answered by Craig. We didn't get them. Sorry, Jezza, but thank you for the super chat. You've done Kiwi Bird. Craig is out here, don't you? Kooky Knit with another one. More likes. Chur, thank you for your super chat. Spider Hoof, thank you for your super chat. Comment on my TikTok post by Vati069. So we just took on $10 billion worth of debt, so she doesn't have to quit her job for lying. Feeling ripped off. Thank you for
that's
passing
that's
that
a
on.
poor deal.
Yeah, it's not a good deal, is it? Did you do JC in the pigeon case? I think you did, didn't you? Unproductive sector. You did that one, didn't you?
Yeah. Yes, I
Yep.
did do
Okay.
that.
Broadfoot. It's taken me half an hour to find the bloody summary of initiatives because build a Ferrari website for a Toyota budget. Like it. Very good. Detective, we've got a Detective Rogers amongst us. Is Seymour to lunch as what Thatcher was to milk? And another one for Detective. Oh, the same thing. Mustn't have thought the super chat went. So that's all the super chats done. Thank you so much for your super chats. We appreciate it. Now, we're an hour in. I'll just be honest with you. I don't know if we'll get to Discord tonight because we want to go through some of the family photos as well, remember? So let's start, shall we, Chewy? Let's start about what was going on today. This is from One News this afternoon. As they were all talking about budgets, Jack Tame crossed outside the building and asked Debbie Ngarewa-Packer, what did the protest achieve today? This is what she said.
I think the most important thing that's been achieved, this is the second activation and it has shown the absolute growth. We are now confirmed as being 20% of the population, up to 1 million of the population, and we are unhappy with the continual dismantling of kaupapa that has incrementally been advanced and advancing our people, whether it be from the health sector to the reo, to our environment, to oranga tamariki. And what we're seeing today is a budget that represents that. Why would anybody be wanting to turn up to celebrate a budget that represents the cuts that they have ruthlessly made against Māori and against tangata hoa, against our rainbow communities, against our whenua?
So there you go. That was comments from Deb. Let's get into the protests today, Chewy. I'll go find some photos and stuff. You can tell us about your experiences. Anything else you've seen? You can bring up that ODT thing as well, because I've got the video to show as well.
I think I do have the ODT article. Yes. So yeah, I sort of mentioned this yesterday that I was lucky enough to have
a good boss,
a manager who
a lovely boss
understood how important this was to me and how important expressing yourself in a democratic process and a protest is important, and probably more important than having me there for a little bit. So I was lucky. There's a lot of people that didn't have that security. So yeah. I think when you do have that security, it's doubly important that you go. You're representing not just yourself at that point. The other important thing for me is something that we've talked a lot about on the show is Māori can't do this by themselves, nor should they. And to hear something echoed in a couple of the speeches, I think that speaks to that as well. What is good for Māori is good for all of us. Because that's literally, and not to diminish the cultural conversation that was going, but that's literally, we're only as strong as the weakest link. Now, horrible way to think about it, but we all know that Māori are at the bottom of a lot of social stats. So, and a bunch of and I'm not saying they're weak, and you're not strong, you don't have mana or anything like that, but when it comes to social stats, if you're down the bottom, then you need the most help. So in other words, if you are the one sitting on the bottom of those social stats, if it's good for you and it helps you, then it helps everybody. Simple. Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it was a really good turnout. It was a shitty cold, almost threatening rain the entire time, but it was a really, really good turnout. I think Pat's got here some video of the march coming into the Octagon. Now, remember, the ODT has said that this is 300 people.
Yeah. Did we actually tell them that before, or did we just tell them that they were being dicks? So that's the number the ODT has listed, 300. This is me just standing off to the side. Remember also, guys, Dunedin, 125,000 people, right? So, I think Dunedin punches above its weight with these kinds of things quite often. Like, as from someone who's only lived here 10 years, it's impressive to see from time to time. And I lift up the camera in a second so you can see how far it keeps on going. There you go. Still a block to come of people.
Very obviously, just 300 people. tiny
Well,
turnout.
Well, you guys were saying, because I had that doesn't matter why today, but I had a procedure, an operation on my leg last Friday, so I didn't do the walk, so I just waited up at the Octagon, and you said there was probably 1,000 down at the start of the walk, and I know more people turned up to the actual event. I've got a bunch of photos here from various people. This is actually from someone here in Dunedin. Let me bring it back up. So this is down at the Cenotaph. But by the time they went and got to, I mean, maybe ODT, if we're going to give them any credit, which we don't need to, maybe they were at the start of the Cenotaph and they didn't see as many people. But this is now up the top. This is the middle of the Octagon, people who don't know Dunedin. So that road there behind them literally cuts the middle of the Octagon. And there were more people than there were down there, because I saw people joining, like me, that weren't able to do the whole thing, work reasons, whatever. So I reckon it went by another half again. So I wouldn't be surprised if you did a head count at some stage. There might have been 2,000 people, but I like being accurate and fair. Let's say there was probably at least 1,500 people. So it was pretty awesome, actually. Pretty awesome.
Also, shout out and acknowledgements to those of you that came up and said hi to me. I was down there in a BHN hoodie, so obviously made myself a bit of a target. But it was good to have a wee chat and to see you there and hear your comments about the show. It was really, really good.
Yeah. I think this might be Wellington. This might be Wellington, maybe. So you keep going, Chu.
Yeah,
I'll roll through some photos.
That's Auckland. That's Aotearoa.
Oh, that's Auckland. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
The other thing I just want to put up that ODT article just so you can see the juxtapose the article that they put up with the photos that they actually put up. I've lost the page. Where's it gone? Is it that
we
one?
Can see it.
Is it that one? I don't know if it's the same one I've got. Hang on.
They're saying hundreds of people.
Yeah. So here we go. 300 strong protest, and then there's that picture.
Yeah,
which is not 300 people.
Yeah.
And I mean, this just seems to be a bit of a thing for the ODT. There's Aotearoa Square as well. I saw images from Wellington, especially because we've got a lot of friends in Wellington that went to that protest. And the crowd outside the railway station before the March on Parliament looked immense.
I read somewhere said 5,000. Hey,
there's me.
I didn't even realize you were wearing your BHN gear, bro. There you go.
Oh, there you go. So yeah, look, I've seen a lot of comments on social media for people that just aren't on message with this. You know, how can you be marching against the budget when it hadn't even been announced? It wasn't about the budget. This was about taking a big day for the government and changing the conversation and just saying, here is a bunch of people that we know this budget isn't for, and all of these things that have, like as we were talking about, have had funding cuts for Māori and Pacific Islanders, funding cuts for housing, which affects Māori, affects all of us, removing the treaty from legislation. Like the last 6 months has everything the government has done, almost without exception, has negatively affected Māori. And as we heard from that clip from Luxon the other day, you know, protest, you know, it's understandable when there's a real tangible sense of frustration.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
And there it is. And they're not camping out on the lawn. They're not forming barricades. They're not abusing passing school kids. The vibe, if you guys had, well, the guys in Wellington will know what that COVID camp was like to be around as far as tone and feeling. And those of us that experienced groundswell moving through their towns, the vibe was different. The vibe was
the singing. The Kapa Haka group came up at the end for probably 20 minutes at the end, and it was amazing. Amazing.
And one of the speakers in Dunedin really nailed it and just said, look, I'm horribly mangling this. I should have written it down at the time. The thing that will set this movement apart from others is the mana that people carry into it. And I think that that sort of reminder of almost like taking the high road, and just holding that just completely changes the vibe of the whole thing. There is anger out there, don't get me wrong, but this was more about a united movement, and it was refreshing to see some just truly excellent, knowledgeable speeches from young people that are coming through, something we've talked about on this show, and something that I saw demonstrated in signs that we saw, Generation Tiriti. Those guys know. Yeah. They know what's up.
This is Rotorua. We've had some photos from Rotorua, and I'm sorry about some of those photos. If you sent me a photo over Messenger, like into the BHN book, when you go through Facebook, it squeezes the images down a fair bit. These are the ones. I think these ones are off email. These are from Rotorua, and I apologize. I'm not naming everyone that sent them. We had heaps of people send us photos. Mm-hmm. So if you've seen your photo, it's your photo. But we'll just go through. So this is Rotorua. Apparently, that's where the ninjas live.
I'm sure you guys that have been sending us the photos, I'm sure you're sharing them around on social media. But when our mainstream news media is downplaying the numbers or choosing how to frame their shots to tell a particular narrative, it's your photos on social media and it's your impressions of what it was like if you were there that is going to change people's perception of it.
Yeah, it was amazing. I know that I've seen a few extra people send me messages, so I'm just going to go straight into the BHN page to see if there's any more messages. Anything in the chat? Anything else you want to add to it? Look, it was an amazing day, and the thing about it is it feels to me like it's step 2 of several. Step 1 was the first activation, as they're saying. This is the second activation, and we're also hearing about, I think it's the 8th of June, 7th, 8th of June. There's going to be another protest over climate change. I think that there's something building, and we talked last night about, you might have to wait to win this via attrition, like the oldies are all disappearing. But as happens in a lot of battles, they always put up the last battle they put forward, the last fight they put forward is often the hardest, most violent, most vigorous, and it feels like that this government is doing that at the moment. It feels like this government is putting up the last of that, kind of European-centric kickback, pushback that they can do. So I kind of wonder if we're on a precipice. Now, I guess in the scale of a country, a precipice might take 20 years to get over, but it feels like we're right there. And it'll be really interesting to see at the end of all of this that we can thank Winston Peters and David Seymour for bringing this generation of people together to fight this fight to make change. Because they're the two. They're the two that have caused this unification of the country, of people pushing back. So, kia ora. Thanks, Uncle Winnie. Thanks, Uncle Sealess.
Couple of comments here. Hi, did see BHN tops in Wellington today.
Oh, cool.
Absolutely. Manju here says, as a regular listener of your podcast, I went to the protest in Auckland to support as a buffer. Excellent. The mood was hopeful and filled with araha, particularly for the tamariki and the rangatahi. Loved Dave Latale.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I got similar thoughts here in Dunedin. I love seeing the kids there. They must have been some of the first down at Queen's Garden here in Dunedin, and I could hear all the kids practicing their chants and their songs and stuff like that. I just got an absolute kick out of it. And speaking of songs, because of course there was a police presence there, as I was looking around, and everyone was singing Tu Tero Mai Ngā Iwi. I saw a cop at the back just going hundies on that song, having a great time. So yeah, really, really enjoyed that. Jackson Media here says, seeing all of this makes me proud to be a Kiwi. Absolutely. Now, the current government's going to talk about racial division. I didn't see it.
No, actually, one thing. So we talked yesterday about look at the faces of the people there. There were a lot of gingers in the Dunedin protest. Now, I know you can be Māori and be a ginger, but if you're going to play the statistical odds, it's less likely. But it can be, right? I'm with you. But yeah, there were a lot of non-Māori faces there. A lot. In fact, one of the coolest comments, I heard someone in an American accent saying "Honour the treaty." It's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah. I saw a lot of hugs. I saw a lot of people looking around, looking at the crowd and going, oh, wow. So, that's really good. Another comment here from Miriam. I was at the Wellington Hikoi, beautiful corridor and Waiata. It was a fantastic contrast to the depressing budget announcement. I was energized by the people there. Brianna on the fight. Yeah, energizing is a good word. And this is why it's important when these things come out that you do go to them, because a lot of what we talk about and it's just death by 100 cuts, but a lot of what we talk about gets too much.
Yeah.
And it's stuff like this of going out and doing something in your area and making yourself visible. It's good for you and it's good for everyone around you.
Yeah.
Because there will be people there that think nobody's going to come to this. Nobody's got my back. Because they're reading social media and they're reading those horrible, horrible comments that are out there.
While we're continuing to talk, this is off a messenger off Facebook, Ototahi. Some images that came in. Made sure we try to get you. If I've missed your images as well, look, I do apologize, but there's been a lot, and it's been actually really, it's been great. There's been a lot because, you guys have wanted to engage, and you've engaged in your own communities, and then you've engaged with us for this community that we're hanging out with right now. So, there you go. Yeah, proud to be a Kiwi is an interesting one. Oi, Luxon, I went to Racistville and everybody knew you. Yeah, so that's pretty much all the photos for now. I think we can just shut those down. But there's probably more that I've missed. I tried my best to keep on top of them, but there we go. Now we've got we won't be here on Monday, King's birthday. It still feels completely strange saying that. King's birthday rather than Queen's birthday. So everyone should have a nice weekend off. I depending on my time this weekend, I might even put together a bit of a best of just for you addicts. I know you got to get your hit. Got to get your hit of chewy. You have to have a wee chewy. So I might put together a best of over the weekend and play it up. But we'll be back live on Tuesday night. Chewy, is there anything we want to wrap up with? It's 22 past 22 past 10.
I think I'm just going to leave it on this comment I just saw come across the chat. Action is where hope comes from. I like that.
All right. Hey guys, thanks for tonight. It's been a blast. Apologies we didn't get to Discord. What do you think?
No, we can't get to Discord tonight, man. We've been
Sure.
here till midnight.
Right.
We've been here till midnight.
You all heard it, guys.
I'm the weak one.
Chewy doesn't
It's
want to
my
talk to you.
fault.
You all heard him. All right, guys.
Because I just know it's going to be everyone pointing out fucking girl math at me. I don't want to be bullied tonight.
We thought we might make a T-shirt, guys. Would that be a seller or not? A girl math T-shirt. I mean, is that going to be horrific? Am I going to get shrapnel for that?
No, it'd never be forgotten.
And we'll do a little outline of Chewy's face actually speaking the words on the T-shirt. Holy crap! There's like 2,000 chats in there. I haven't seen any of them. All right. Hey, it's been a really fabulous night. Thank you, team. It kind of feels a little bit like the day that started with protesters ended us hanging out tonight and sort of having a cup of tea and talking about how our days were. And just Craig Renney, huge thanks if you see this. And if you don't see this, huge thanks. It's just been a great one. Look, I think the votes are coming in. There you go. No more girl math. No, that's a misspelling. It's missing an apostrophe. No, more girl math. Okay.
It's missing a comma there.
But we're being told.
Yes, but I would get lynched.
Yeah,
and I've got to tell
might be worth it.
The attacker is already in this house.
It might be worth it.
No,
it might be worth it. What about What about the otter one then? The otter and the bear. Is that one going to work as well? Are we? I'm too dumb to know this. Are we actually being bullied right now? Is that what's happening?
That's how you know, because you don't know.
Hey, just before we go, a huge thanks to everyone for being involved. This week it's been great fun. It's been great fun being with you. And as I said, no live show Monday night because we are going to take a holy day. I think that's where it's from, isn't it? And other than that, have a great weekend. But on Tuesday,
What have we got on Tuesday? A very special episode.
Oh yeah, Chippy. So Chippy on Tuesday. They call it Chippy Tuesday. I think he's going to be on every Tuesday from now on. Chippy Tuesday is what they call it. So thanks, team.
If you guys have any specific questions that you'd like us to ask,
Chippy on Chippy Tuesday. Yeah. If you do have anything you want to ask him, probably email bighairynews@gmail.com over the weekend, because I suspect we'll get him for 14 minutes or something. So that's how it typically rolls. All right. I think it's time for us to go out dancing though, and we'll catch you Tuesday live for the next one. Beautiful people.
And you pick up the news, big hairy style, keeping it loose. New Zealand, where the politics play, they bring the truth every single day. Talking about the mess all over the land. They shine a light with a mic in their hand. No time for cheese, just act straight up. Plan chewing, never backing up. From the Cape to Bluff, no place too far. They expose the truth and raise the bar. Politicians tremble at their mighty voice. Pat and chew, they'll make the right choice.
Few thanks to all our patrons. You guys help us to continue to do this. If you'd like to support what we do, if you've enjoyed the show of the week and you want to help us continue to keep on doing it, head to patreon.com/bighairynews. Other than that, we'll catch you next week from Tuesday at 9 p.m. for our next live show of Big Hairy News. Have a safe weekend. If you're driving, drive safe over the long weekend. Have a good break, and we'll catch you Tuesday from 9. Hooroo!
Cheers, man.